Welcome back to GrokTALK. Brought to you by GraniteGrok.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Check them out at cnht.org and visit us at GraniteGrok.com. Don't forget, you can also listen on Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeart, and Spreaker. Podcasts are available at GraniteGrok.com going back over a year now. Thank you very much to all those of you, and please take a moment to donate. Hit the donate button. It's right there on the right side. Big microphone, hard to miss. Help us keep the equipment in good working order.
Spirit in the sky.
I think, Spirit in the sky, right? It's appropriate.
Shining the light on him.
So, oh, that was you. I thought I heard thunder for a minute. I'm like, I thought the rain stopped already. Okay, well, speaking of thunder, we have with us a gentleman who had some of the best, maybe the only reporting at great length of the counter-protest to the idea of a satanic mass at Harvard. And he is on the phone with us to share his observations. Pete and Jemmy, welcome to the program.
Hello, great to be on Granite Grok, especially being so far away. Right now I'm in Alabama.
Alabama.
I'm at Casa Maria, the convent retreat house, where I'm going to be doing my show live from down here. It's fairly close to the EWTN studios. It's a religious retreat. And if you're in New England, or if your only experience is of liberal nuns who are crying feminism, you have to come down here, because not only are the nuns devout here, but they're so young. They are. It's all these. I've talked to half a dozen of all these young women who are here devoting themselves to God, and it's. I don't know about these other orders that are having troubles, but the ones down here who are faithful, they're still. There's a ton of young women here, and they're all praying for you. It's not.
Hey, so we need to import them from. Have them emigrate.
Their prayers are doing. I mean, I was with them this morning, and they were doing the morning prayer that they do, and it's an hour long of prayers and readings, and it's mostly prayers for other people, the people who aren't there, the people who aren't praying, the people who don't believe, and they basically spend all day praying for other people, doing the heavy lifting. It's like everything else in the world. There's always 5% who do 80% of the work, and these nuns are doing it.
That's typical. So, you had some very exclusive reporting on an event recently closer to home, up here in Massachusetts. So why don't you tell us, give us some background. Harvard wanted to hold, some people in Harvard wanted to hold a satanic mass for probably just PR reasons, but you ended up being part of a massive counter-protest.
Well, I'll try and give you the story in full. What's amusing about, of course, the idea of a black mass in Harvard is that it would confirm what a lot of us think of Harvard these days. But what happened is this website, Women of Grace, which is connected to EWTN, reported that Harvard was going to have a black mass. The Harvard Exchange Cultural Club was going to be, the Harvard Extension School, I should say, Cultural Club, was going to host the Satanic Temple out of New York, and these are the same guys who want to put that Satan statue up in the Midwest to counter a Ten Commandments to hold a black mass. Well, Elizabeth Scalia, the anchoress who writes at Pathos, spotted this and called up the people involved in the black mass and asked them about what they're doing. They confirmed, yes, we're going to have a black mass. She asked them if, like a regular black mass, they were going to have a consecrated host and desecrate it, which the black mass is a parody of the Catholic Mass, where the Catholic Church, the rites of the Catholic Church are parodied and disgraced, where the Eucharist, which Catholics maintain or would say, I won't say we believe, I'm saying we consider it a fact that the host is the body and blood of Christ, is desecrated and so forth. Well, when she heard about that, she wrote about it, and I wrote about it, and they confirmed to her that they had a consecrated host to desecrate. And they had also emailed this information to another person. I heard about this then from Elizabeth. I called the Vatican Embassy, and I called the local diocese to get comment. The Vatican saying that because Harvard was not a Catholic college, that the local diocese would be involved in whatever response. And Harvard's response was very amusing in that they had 4 different statements. The first statement was, yeah, they're doing this, but it's nothing different than a Shinto tea ceremony. or these other things that they're hosting. And what's funny about this is that later on, the Satanists started to claim that they weren't really Satanists. So if a cultural society is equating the black mass with people who don't really believe in Satan, that'd be like a bunch of Scotsmen holding the Shinto tea ceremony. Hutman, bring the tea out. So the first statement really didn't say anything. The second statement included an email from the club saying, no, we're not out to offend anybody. The third statement, as the pressure started coming out, was saying, we disagree with doing this, but but we have no power to stop it. And while this was going on, all sorts of response started coming from various Catholics, people in Harvard who were Catholic, who were like, what is our university doing about this? A young lady started a petition which ended up with 60,000 signatures, including a bunch of Harvard alum. But the biggest response came from MIT, being very practical people, and the diocese. The diocese said, we are going to hold a holy hour. And what a holy hour, for those non-Catholics listening, is when the Blessed Sacrament, the Holy Eucharist, which we believe is Christ in the flesh, is exposed. There's prayers, readings of the gospel, a homily, and a series of prayers and adoration. And it was going to be done. In addition, the Catholic League said that they would appear at the site where the Black Mass was supposed to take place, which was the Memorial Hall, which is there to honor the Union dead from Harvard, and do a rosary of reparation, basically to pay for the sins of this, because as far as we Catholics are concerned, it doesn't matter if these guys really believe in Satan, because Satan believes in them. And like any useful idiots, like Leonard used useful idiots, he would use these useful idiots to their own ends to desecrate Harvard. Well, at MIT, the chaplain there decided, we are going to have a procession with the Blessed Sacrament. Now, with the procession, what happens is the Blessed Sacrament is basically held, and you process from one place to another, and people are praying behind it. He had talked to Cambridge about getting a permit, and he said, we don't know how many are going to show up, maybe 10, maybe 50, or whatever. Well, I got down to Harvard MIT at 5 o'clock. I was there first. The chapel was empty, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with the MIT chapel. It's basically a circle with a corridor and a pair of doors, two pairs of doors on opposite sides, so people can pass through the chapel if they don't have to walk around it. And then another area, and then like bathrooms and such below it. So I got there. There weren't very many people at first. The Boston Globe showed up to start asking questions and so forth of people. But then it got to be too crowded for me to set up inside the chapel. All the seats were filling up, and the walls were filling up. So I moved from the chapel to a table just outside the chapter in the corridor. But then the corridor was too full. So I basically put my laptop on top of a trash barrel at the end of the corridor near the doors. But then that was too full. So I had to move outside, and by the time the adoration, I mean, they were coming in bus loads and car loads, and if you look at some of the video I shot, from both doors of the MIT chapel, the people were extending out from one side of the door to the other, turning the straight structure with the circle at the bottom into a cross from this, if you looked at it from the sky, which is ironic in itself. I hand counted 382 people inside the building before I was forced out. And my final count of the procession was over 500 when there was a series of prayers done, and then I ran around the other side of the building, set up my camera, and basically just filmed people procession. And that ran over 4 minutes and 56 seconds.
That's a lot of people.
Certainly. It was over 500 or 600 people. It was an incredible site that ran about the length of it was over. Think of a football field with both end zones.
You know, one of the things that struck me about this, Pete, maybe you can speak to this, is that when you look at the Ivy League schools, especially Harvard, you know, one of the oldest, I think the oldest higher educational institute in the United States, they all started off as seminaries, Christian seminaries. And to see that somebody wanted to do a Black Sabbath rite associated with Harvard, it just totally turns things upside down from where we were at the founding of this country to where we are today. And it's almost an apt metaphor.
Well, it's really something when you think about it. In fact, Harvard was also very anti-Catholic for a long time. So it's it's doubly ironic that it was the Catholics who did the most to keep this out. But as this was all going on, to continue the story, we got word that the Exchange Club decided that they didn't want to hold this on campus anymore. A few hours earlier, the president of Harvard put out a statement, and it was the strongest statement of all of them, saying this is abhorrent, this is an insult to Catholics, and I'm going to be at this adoration, even though she wasn't Catholic, to show my support. But this is free speech. We can't stop it. We're not going to stop it. And I actually called on her to resign if it took place on campus, because if Satanists want to hold a satanic mass, that's their business. But if it's a Harvard-sponsored club inviting them to do it on Harvard property, then it's Harvard's business. And once the Satanists got the word was out that this was happening, suddenly their line changed. Suddenly their email confirmations of having a host became denials that, this was just miscommunication. Suddenly it was not. Suddenly the Satanists were claiming we're not about upsetting any religion or so forth, which is false on its face. And then came we don't really worship Satan. We're just parodying this. But you don't see them parodying a Jewish Seder. You don't see them burning a Quran or parodying Muhammad. Of course, they don't want to. They would meet Satan much sooner that way if they did. But all of this stuff was going on. So Harvard they announced they're going to move the event to this restaurant, the Middle East restaurant on Mass Ave. Well, the Middle East restaurant decides we don't want anything to do with it. And so they very much say, we're not hosting a black mass here. So they back out. And by 9 p.m., when the procession finally reached St. Paul's, the procession from MIT, which was about 600, they were already almost 1,000 people inside the church. There was no room for people. And you had people in the stairs, you had people in the vestibule. There was just no room. I ended up managing to sneak upstairs to the choir area and film from up there. And if you go to the site, the post I have up is called Harvard Doesn't Go to the Devil with Some Help from MIT. That's at techguiblog.com. That's DATECHGUI blog.com. And I got some shots of the inside. I got the homily and so forth. And it was just a mass of people. Meanwhile, at the location, the original location, the Catholic League and this other lay Catholic group, who I like to call the 101st Airborne of Catholics, because you've seen them at CPAC with the red sashes and so forth. They're a group, the Coalition for Tradition, Family, and Property, and so forth. They were there and praying, and the Satanists were there, and they were taunting them and trying to provoke them, and they weren't being moved. So they just kept praying. Finally, the Exchange Club canceled the event. And what happened afterwards is the Satanists reportedly found a Chinese restaurant, the Hong Kong.
They sacrificed an egg roll?
On Mass Ave. And they went down there, ate, and then used the room up top for their event, for their Black Mass, with about 50 Satanists. At least that's what the Harvard Crimson reported. The owner of the restaurant claims to know nothing about it. I called them up. I tried to talk to a manager. The managers were not available. They wouldn't call me back. So they seem to be trying to distance themselves very much from whatever happened there.
Satan's not that popular, apparently.
Well, it's this. If they were just holding a protest at Harvard, that would be one thing. If they wanted to hold a black mass on someone else's private property or so forth, they're Satanists. Under the First Amendment, they have the right. It's a dangerous thing, and as Catholics would tell you, like as I said earlier, they're dealing with forces they don't understand or do understand or pretending not to understand. It's a horrible thing. But the thing for us was Harvard University, Harvard Club hosting it on Harvard's campus. And if 40 or 50 Satanists from New York want to hold something in a Chinese restaurant, and they want to let them have it, that's their right as Americans. But it was a huge defeat. And what I found interesting in the coverage the next day is how little emphasis they gave on the procession, because they were closing down streets in Cambridge. because there were so many people.
Didn't you say they had police officers had come and they
Yeah,
were
the
blocking
police were
streets so that...
they had to block the street for the station to go by. And what's very funny, and this shades of the Tea Party here, the police, and as you might imagine, is not as a hotbed of protest. So they get a lot of protesters through there, and generally the protesters are not all that friendly to the police. I talked to Cambridge police officers who were telling me, we have never been thanked so many times in our lives, because the people who were processing were thanking them, thanks for closing off the streets for us, thanks for helping out, shaking their hands and so forth. It was very strange to them. It was very, very strange to them, all of the greetings. Now, you see that on occasion with the Tea Party, but in Cambridge, you never see that when you're dealing with police, which was another very, very, very fun thing.
Yeah, they're all racist down there, right? According to Obama. And,
Harvard Square looks like an open sewer some of the time. It's not a pleasant place. So Peter, I thought I read in your email newsletter that the club which had been hosting it turned out that it wasn't a Harvard-sponsored club, or in some way,
it's the Harvard Extension School.
Okay.
The club is called the Harvard Extension School, and they claim that it's not part of Harvard proper, but it bears Harvard's name. And you see, you can't have it both ways. You can't claim we have nothing to do with this and then use Harvard's name, because that's really what this was about. They were using Harvard's name to promote Satanism, and if Harvard wants to be connected with that, if that's what Harvard wants to do, that's their right. And if donors decide they don't want to be involved, if people don't want to deal with Harvard, that's their right too. It's like those brothers in that Sun Financial. Yesterday, the story came out that they were divesting from the pair of Christian brothers who said that we're not going to give up our beliefs over for a TV show. And then within a couple of hours, they decided that there were more Christian depositors and investors and possible real estate buyers than non-Christian, and they ran with their tail between their legs.
We're going to take a quick break, Pete, and we'll be right back. Hang on.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Dave Booten has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. He voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Booten's vote? Call Senator Booten at 603-203-5391 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
All right, we're back with Pete and Jemmy, and you just brought up a great example. Were you going to...
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Pete, you talked about the Benham brothers, the folks who got kicked off of HGTV from their own reality show because basically because of their beliefs, the left assaulted them for being anti-gay and extremists, for holding extremist, basically what I consider traditional Christian views, and then the Sun Trust Bank pulled their funding from them, and then people complained. And I was listening to the Megyn Kelly show last night on Fox as I was falling asleep, and Dana Loesch was on against a leftist apologist who started and called the Benham brothers extremists and anti-gay simply because they were in favor of traditional marriage. And I thought the best part, and I got to try to get the video and post it, where Dana Loesch turned around and said, "You are an anti-Christian bigot." And I think that really sums up what we on the right have to start saying to the left. You are anti-Christian bigots, and actually call them out because of this.
Well, it's hilarious when they use the language the left's use, and it's very deliberate. It's to try and create something false, because if we use their definition, until 1972, the entire country was functioning as a bunch of anti-gay bigots because of abortion not being legal. all doctors, until they changed the Hippocratic Oath for thousands of years, were all anti-gay bigots because abortion was specifically prohibited in the Hippocratic Oath until just a couple of decades ago. And, of course, gay marriage didn't exist in the United States until a 4-3, and let's not forget, the only reason why there's gay marriage in America is because of a 4-3 ruling in the Massachusetts Supreme Court 10 years ago. So until 2004, the land was filled with anti-gay bigots. And if the left wants to try and pretend that the entire population of the country was anti-gay bigots until 2004, they can try and make that case, but it's absurd on its face. And they should be called out on this, because this is all about creating a narrative, and it's all about creating something that I call secular blasphemy. They are trying to create, they talk about blasphemy laws, for example, the blasphemy laws in Islam, which they don't object to because they're used to kill Christians. But they're trying to create secular blasphemy. And I remind our friends on the left, and Father Mitch Pacwa was giving a sermon yesterday during the Mass that I attended down here in Alabama. And he mentioned the fact that there have been about 750 million Christian martyrs over the course of history. But in the 20th century, there have been more Christians martyred for their faith than in all of the other centuries put together. And Christian martyrdom is going on now, but it's not much of something that anyone fusses over because, and if you're of the left and you object to this, I don't care. I think the left likes dead Christians. I think that the left would like, or they might not pull the trigger themselves, but they're not going to object because the Christian faith and the Christian norms are what they want to get rid of.
Because they are the ultimate bulwark against Marxism.
Right, so they're defining secular blasphemy, and that's basically what's happened. They're creating their own secular blasphemy laws, and the idea is to marginalize people who believe.
And you're absolutely right. And right now they've been doing quite the swath through the American cultural scene, and I think they're just starting to see in isolated instances still, but I think people are starting to say enough of this because we're tired of feeling that we're under attack all the time. It is political correctness is cultural Marxism, where the whole idea is to turn the value systems totally upside down, and we're starting to see the pushback saying, no, I am not alone. There are other people who believe like me. You just look back a while ago at the Chick-fil-A incident where everybody disagreed with the attacks on the Chick-fil-A CEO and went and visited their, all of their restaurants.
By the way, that's another reason to come down here to Birmingham, because there's a Chick-fil-A at the airport. You can get Chick-fil-A as I did right as you get off the plane and don't have to drive 45 minutes like I normally do to get it if I want it. But the thing is, their power comes from fear. They don't have the numbers, but they have the cultural levers, and what they want is fear. And the first virtue, the virtue that makes every other virtue possible, is courage. And you have to have the courage to stand up, like Dana Lash having the courage to say, you're an anti-Christian bigot, because these people are. The courage, the Bertham brothers saying, we would rather give up our show than our faith because it is more important than our show. The nuns here, the young nuns here, you can imagine how their high school friends think when they're down here, cloistered nuns in full habits, none of this non-nun looking stuff. As one of them told me, saying, if I'm going to be a nun, I'm going to wear the habit because I don't want anyone to think that I'm not proud to be a nun. And it's all a question of having courage. And I would urge every Granite Grok listener, if you stand up to these people, have courage, because that courage is what inspires other people to defeat them. There are a lot of other people who think like you do, but are afraid of being called names. And all you need is people willing to stand up and say, follow,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to stomp on you there, Pete. You're right. The word courage, we here at Granite Grok and GrokTALK use the word fearlessness, and we are looking for people to be fearless, to stand up for what they believe is right. You look at the Declaration of Independence where they pledged their fortunes and their honor and their good names. They were willing to stand up for principles, and we don't see that very much anymore from those who believe in traditional values. And we need to urge those people, what used to be called the silent majority, to say, just like Glenn Beck did with the 9/12 Project, he had one phrase: "You are not alone." And look what he accomplished. So many people stood up and said, "You're right, we're not alone." That even from being overwhelmed by this sea of wretchedness from the left, we are still more than they are, and we do need to stand up. And when we do, we win.
And I would remind them of what U.S. Grant said just before his first big battle. He was talking about going up a hill, and he was talking about how his heart was pounding, how he's worried about what the enemy at this location during the Civil War. And when they got to the camp, the enemy was gone. And as he put it, that's when it hit me that they were just as much afraid of me as I was of them. It's a piece of the equation I had never thought of before, but I never forgot it since. And never forget, we outnumber these people. Andrew Breitbart, when he appeared in Lexington, talked about this, saying that these people won't confront us, bring it on, or fight with us, because they know they're outnumbered. They're basically playing Bedford Forest, trying to keep up the scare on us. And if we let ourselves be afraid, we're gonna lose. But if we let ourselves not be afraid and use our superior numbers, we're gonna win, and we're gonna win big.
Right, and Steve's saying that it's time to wind up, so I'm going to need to put in a plug for you here, Pete. So you're listening to Pete Ndiemi, the tech guy. He writes at datechguyblog.com, datechguiblog.com, and near the top of the page you will find a Dat Tip jar. Pete is entirely subscriber funded, and he appreciates anything you can donate, and he gets out there and he does real journalism.
Pete, we're done. Thank you so much for taking some time.
Me.
All right, enjoy Alabama.
Thank you. Yep, and the Tech Guy on the Radio, noon to 2 today, Eastern Time.
All right, everybody
Excellent.
Tune in. Thanks a lot, Pete. We'll talk to you later. All right, that is the second segment of GrokTALK on whatever day today is, May 17, 2014. I'm here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers. My name is Steve McDonald, and we will be right back, hopefully, with Jane Cormier.
When asked whether she still supports Obamacare, Senator Jeanne Shaheen said,
"Yes, I do continue to support the law. We're beginning to see some positive results."
How can Senator Shaheen say we're seeing positive results when 22,000 of our neighbors have already lost their health insurance? What's worse, the Boston Globe reports the state's only health insurance provider radically reduced the number of hospitals in their network, forcing some people to drive over an hour for lab work, even when there's a hospital within a few miles of their home. When pressed about lack of access, Shaheen said,
There are some hospitals that are not covered, unfortunately, and I certainly hope that's going to change.
Jeanne Shaheen promised us we could keep our doctors and our healthcare coverage. Now she hopes we can get to a local hospital? Call Senator Shaheen at 603-647-7500. Tell her we need more than hope. We need leadership. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK is 2 hours of news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com. But don't limit yourself to GrokTALK. Check us out at GraniteGrok.com. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter by searching Granite Grok.
Grok TV.